Welcome to Excel Magic Trick number 1349. Hey, if you want to download this Excel workbook, Excel Magic Trick 1349 finished, or the start file so you can follow along, click on the link below the video. Wow, we have a great video here. We want to see how to use Power Query with input variables from an Excel sheet to extract records. Now, here's our master table. And this is our end result that we want Power Query to deliver. We have chosen only a certain number of columns, calculated total revenue, and filtered our records based on criteria that we can change in the Excel spreadsheet. So if I change this from Quad to Yanaki and USA to Asia and click this button, instantly it updates. This kind of query is oftentimes referred to as a parameterized query. But as we know, there's always lots of synonyms. So you may hear input variable, criteria, condition, parameter. Whatever you want to call it, our goal here was to extract all the records with product Yanaki and region Asia. Now, our steps are listed over here. We're first going to import and transform the data set. Then we'll load the report to the sheet. That process will generate some M code that we can go and change later. Then we'll import each parameter criteria table. And we'll have to convert each criteria table to a single text item. Then we'll use that text item as our variable. We will, in step 5, declare an insert variable into M code, and then create a macro to refresh all and assign that macro to a form button. All right, let's go over to our start file. Now, here we are over in our start file. Now, anytime we use Power Query, our data has to come from an Excel table. So I've converted this to a table and named it. It's called F-Sales. This is a single record table. Product is the field name. Quad is the one element in the product field. That would be our criteria. And I've named this product criteria. Now I want to do the same thing over here. Region USA. I'm going to click in a single cell, go up to Insert, Table, or use the keyboard Control-T. My table has headers. Click OK or hit Enter. Now, I actually want to add data validation. So we have a drop down here. Click in the cell, Data, Data Tools, Data Validation, or you can use the keyboard Alt-DL. By default, it allows any value. We don't want to allow any value. So I click the drop down and select List. And then there's the source. Now, I'm going to scroll over here. I have already created a unique list of all of our regions. Highlight. Click OK. And so now inside our table, we have a drop down to select our region. Now we're going to start by bringing this table in and transforming it. Click in a single cell, Data, and in Excel 2016, Power Query is Get and Transform. If you have Excel 2013 or 10, you have to download it and install it as a separate tab. Whichever version you have to use From Table to get this into Power Query. So it brought in our columns. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call this something like Final Report and Enter. Now I'm going to look through each one of the columns, and I'm looking at the data type icon to see if any of them have the wrong data type. This one I don't want. I don't want date and time. I want just date. Now I can select this column, go up to Home, drop down for date, or I can simply click the icon for data type and change this to date. Now I want to add hard-coded filters for product and region. I'm going to click on the filter drop down. Instantly I get a unique list. I'm going to uncheck select all and select Aspen for now. That is being hard-coded into our query, but later we'll change it. Click OK. Now I go to region, and because we're doing it on 2 columns, this is an AND logical test. Click the drop down, unselect all, and I'm going to say Africa. Click OK. Only records that have both product Aspen and region Africa are shown. Now I want to add my helper column to calculate revenue. Add column, add custom column. We're going to call this net revenue. Now, I'm going to create my formula here, and I need to multiply units, price, and 1 minus the discount. But I do need to round. In Power Query, the function for rounding is Number.Round. Now, be sure to spell this right and get the capitalization correct. Now, inside the first argument of round, I can simply come over here to my fields, double-click regions, times, double-click price, times, in parentheses, 1 minus the discount, double-click, close parentheses, comma. Just like in Excel round function, the second argument asks us to what position do you want to round. I'm rounding to the penny, so I type a 2. Now this Number.Round function rounds like the VBA round function, or most database functions. It does bankers rounding or halfway even rounding. Now we click OK, and there is our helper column to calculate total revenue. Now I'm going to click on price, then hold Control, click on discount and units. I do not want any of those columns, so I right-click Remove. I can see over here it's stored a number of steps for us. We will come back and actually look at the M code for those steps after we load our criteria from the Excel sheet. Now we want to go to Home, Close and Load to. I definitely want to put this on an existing sheet. By all means, you could put it on a new sheet. Click the collapse button. I'm going to try to put this in cell J8. Click OK. Click Load. I can see over in the Workbook Queries window, there's my query. Later, we'll come and edit that. There's the output report. Now, we need to import each one of these and transform them into a single text item so we can use them in our final report query. Now, instead of going to Data from Table, I'm going to use the keyboard, Alt-APT. Now, the name over here came from the name of the table, and that's perfectly all right. Down here in Applied Steps, I do not need this change type, so I'm going to exit out, and that removes it. Now, I need to convert this to just a text item. So we're going to go change the M code and add a new line. View, Advanced Editor. Now, M code will always start with let unless you have a function, source, and then Excel.CurrentWorkbook is the function that got our table. Now, before it gets to in and then lists the output you want, if there's only one step, there's no comma. But we need to add a step, so I type comma, then Enter Tab. I'm going to call this and criteria 01 space equal sign space. And I need to extract the first record, which is the only record. So I'm going to use a function called Record.Field, open parentheses. Now, anytime we have a function that we're using, it needs to reference the output from the previous step. So I'm going to type source. Now, source is a table that has records and a field. We want the first record in this table. Now, I can't put 1 because Power Query is base 0, not base 1. So 0 means 1. Not only that, but you have to put it in curly brackets, which is list syntax. But that means get the first record in that table. Now we have to type a comma and say from which field. The name of that field in double quotes is product. In double quotes, close parentheses. Now we do not put a comma here because in needs to know that this last step, which needs to be renamed. So I double click, copy, double click, Control V, backspace. No comma there means we put in and then whatever the output is that we want. Now this Record.Field, when I click Done, will deliver a single text item. We have a visual cue right here. Not only that, but we can see up here it says Text Tools. And that's it. We can access that criteria by using the query name in the original final report query. Now I'm going to click Home, Close and Load to. We only want a connection. Click Load. And there it is. Now let's come and do this to the second table. Now before we bring this up there, we never named this. So Design, Properties, Table Name, or the keyboard Alt-JTA. Now I'm up here and I want to call this Region Criteria and Enter. Now with a single cell, I'm going to use the keyboard to get Excel table into Power Query, Alt-APT. There's our name. That is fine. I do not need change type. I click the X. I go up to View, Advanced Editor. Come to the end of the first line, comma, Enter, Tab. And criteria 2, space, equals, space. Record.Field, open parentheses. Source, that's the previous output. Curly bracket 0. We're using base 0, so that means get the first record, comma, and then we need to know which field. And this is region, and double quotes, close parentheses. We'll double click copy, double click this, Control V backspace. That will be our output. Click Done. There it is. Home, close and load to. Only create a connection and load. Look at that. We have our two queries that are delivering text items. Now we can come up to Final Report. Right-click, Edit. Over to View, Advanced Editor. I'm going to come right before Source and hit Enter, Enter, Tab. All right, we're going to declare our variable. Now, the way M code works, these are the names of the applied steps, equal, and then your code. If you do not have spaces, you do not need to put it in double quotes and pound sign. So I'm going to name this step, and criteria 1 equals, and then the name of the query. Product criteria, remember, is a single text item. So I'm going to double click, Control C, and look down in the M code for filtered rows. There's the function table.select rows. There's the previous output or previous step, comma, each. That means do this for each row. Make sure that you look for product and it has to be equal to. There's our hard-coded criteria. Shift arrow, 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 Control V. So we've linked the output from this query down to the product criteria. Now I'm going to very carefully tab and criteria 02 equal and type region criteria. Hopefully I spelled this right. I didn't look at that. Don't worry, if you don't spell it right, it won't work. All right, let's try this. Double click Control C, and I'm looking down here. There is the hard-coded value that I want to replace with my variable Control V. Now I can't click Done because I forgot comma, comma. Each step except for the last one, which represents our output, has to have a comma. Now I hope if I click Done, no errors. And we can see our steps added to the top here. Equal, there is the query that results in a single text item in both cases. All right, let's go and try this. Home, and just click Close and Load. And there it is. It looks like it's already working. If I come over here to the drop-down and say Yanaki, drop-down, Europe. Now, I haven't added a button yet, but I can certainly do that. And go up to Data, Refresh All, or use the keyboard Control-Alt-F5. That is amazing. Now, let's add a button. Now, it's actually a super simple line of code. I think it's active workbook.refresh all, but I'm not even going to bother writing it. I'm going to get the macro recorder to write it for me. Then we'll assign it to a button. Now, in order to have a macro, you have to have .xlsm, and you have to show the developer tab. So if you don't see the developer tab, you have to go to one of your other tabs, right-click, customize ribbon. And then over here, you have to check developer. We have developer. We can click it, go over to record macro, or down on the status bar, you can click that button, and boom, it opens up record macro. I'm going to call this refresh all reports and queries. We're not going to assign a keyboard. It's definitely going to be stored in this workbook. I could definitely add a description. All right, now I click OK. But before I click OK, anything I do before hitting the stop recording macro will get recorded. So we're going to be very careful. I'm going to click OK. I'm simply going to come up to Data, click Refresh All, or use the keyboard. Either one of these things will record the same line of code. I'm going to do it. Control-Alt-F5. That's it. Only one teeny thing. Now I can come down to the status bar and click Stop, or up to Developer and Stop. I'm going to click the button down here. I can tell that it's stopped because I see the Record Macro button, and certainly up here, there's the Record Macro button. Now I go over to Controls, Insert, Form Button. Click and drag. And here's the one that I recorded. I want to assign this, so I click OK. I also want to add some text. So I'm going to click and then delete this and type something helpful. Drag it over top here. And then click outside the edge. And let's try this. Come over here. I'm going to change it to sunshine. I'm going to change it to South America and click my button. Boom, it's working. By the way, we can go to Developer, Visual Basic, or Alt F11. Over here is our project window. There's the name of our workbook, Modules. Double-click Module 1, and there it is. This is the one we recorded, and that's it, Active Workbook.Refresh All. Let's close this. Change our criteria one more time. Carlota, Canada. Click the refresh button. Boom. All right, that was a little fun with starting with the table, building our final report query over here, dumping it into the sheet, then importing each one of our tables using Record.Field function to create text for both, taking the names of these queries and declaring them as a variable, and then inserting them into the code, and then recording a macro, inserting a button, and boom. All right, we'll see you next video.